Thank you so much. All righty. So let's go on to ask this big question. Why should we schedule anything at all? And some of you are saying, of course we need to schedule. We have a project. But let's talk about the reasons why we want to think about scheduling. We want to understand when we can expect some kind of a deliverable. In a serial lifecycle, a waterfall project, you could only see all the deliverables at the end. In an Agile project, you have opportunities to see deliverables all the way through the project. Sorry, my cold is screwing up my voice. Oh well. Sometimes you might want to be able to forecast a date to understand how much progress you will get to and possibly the cost it will take to get to that particular forecast, that particular date, that particular deliverable. And certainly, we want to manage risks inside and outside the project. We have customer risks, we have deliverable risks, we have all kinds of risks around how the people work, what they actually do. So we might need to have a plan B. And when we think about schedules, those are one way to present the options. So let me see if I can do this. Okay. So often I get the question, can we actually schedule an Agile project? If Agile allows us to change what we work on, right, if we have a backlog and we can change the backlog at any time, what we deliver, how small a thing can we deliver, and the value of the work, then does scheduling actually make any sense in an Agile project? And I want to answer this question a little bit differently than with just a yes or no answer. If you have read Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, you understand about the build, measure, learn feedback loop. So you have a bunch of ideas. You build some or one of those ideas. That produces the product. You can then measure something about that product, which provides you data, which allows you to learn, which feeds back into the ideas. So instead of thinking about baselining a project schedule or the one right way we might want this project to proceed, let's think about sequencing the work. Because if we can actually deliver value on a regular basis, how can we sequence the work? That means we can also think about a minimum viable product. That's with the build, measure, learn loop, where we actually deliver part of this product, or possibly a minimum viable experiment, which is a business hypothesis that we want to test. That leads us to think about, at least it leads me to think about, rolling wave deliverable-based planning. Now, I am sure that all of you have thought about rolling wave deliverable-based planning before. Rolling wave says, I'm going to plan for some amount of time, and I have often used not more than 4 weeks at a time. And as we finish the first week, we solidify the next week or the next 2 weeks, and then we have a start on a plan for that fourth week. That's a 4-week rolling wave. And if you have deliverables in there, right, what people can see, what people can demo, what people can give you feedback on, that actually really works quite well. Back when I was using a stage delivery lifecycle, which is an incremental, not an agile lifecycle, I had 1 month rolling waves, and we had a demo at the end of every month. And I had plans for the next couple of weeks based on that. So let me talk about what Agile allows us to do. We have ideas swirling around in the organization, and that responsible person, often called a product owner, takes those ideas and creates a ranked backlog for a cross-functional team. That team produces shippable product, this thing that I'm calling value, on a regular basis. And you'll notice that some of these things are very small, and they keep building on each other. And they build, and they build, and they build. At some point, the team does a demonstration and a retrospective. Now, if you're like me, you like one-day stories where people actually deliver, right? This team as a whole delivers finished product in one day. And you might be saying, how is this even possible? Well, the key is you figure out the smallest possible thing that you can actually deliver that makes sense, that you would want to demonstrate to a customer, a product owner, this somehow outside the team. Now, I'm not saying you need to have a retrospective every day, although some teams do a very quick retrospective every day. It might make sense to have a retrospective every week or every 2 weeks. But you'll notice that I'm kind of agnostic about the idea of, are we working in iterations or are we working in flow? I don't actually care, as long as we have a ranked backlog that has some number of stories, not too many, and the team can produce value on a regular basis, this shippable product. That means that Agile can enable this build, measure, learn loop. So we have to break these ideas down into these very small chunks of value. If I go backwards, you can see this ranked backlog. These are skinny, skinny lines. That allows us to produce chunks of value that are very small. Now we build one small chunk, we create this minimum product, we measure the effects with data, and then we learn. And that allows us, I'm going to go back one more time, sorry, that allows us to change the ranked backlog. Now those of you who are working in iteration-based Agile, such as Scrum, know that you have a ranked backlog for an iteration. I am not suggesting that you change the ranked backlog for the iteration that you are in. I am suggesting that you have a ranked backlog for the iteration that you're in, and then a possible backlog that you have already started to plan a little bit and that you refine as you proceed. If you can imagine finishing a story every day, that allows the product owner to create a ranked backlog for the next iteration as you proceed through this iteration. So you always have a rolling wave of one iteration's worth of work. If you're working in flow, you might have a WIP limit, a work in progress limit on what the ranked backlog is, and the team always takes the first item off the backlog. And so if you want to change the next item on the backlog, that's okay, because the number of items in the backlog does not change for flow. Okay. So we want to be able to use this build, measure, learn loop to great effect in our Agile projects. But how do we do that? So let's talk about minimum viable products or minimum viable experiments. I once worked with a guy who said, when we do an MVP, we just go through the GUI and the app layer and the middleware and into the platform. And I said, and do you come back out? He said, well, no, it's kind of a one-way trip. I said, so how do you know if you've done anything right? Would people pay you for that? He said, well, no.